In the silence of the forest, a forgotten secret awakened beneath the golden mist. A distant bark guided uncertain steps towards the unknown. Light and darkness clashed, revealing hidden portals and ancient dangers. With their fate at stake, they charged forward, ready to face the impossible. Before hearing this true story, remember to subscribe to the channel to discover more exciting stories like this one. The sun rose lazily over the hills surrounding Pinewood Springs, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Olivia, a 25-year-old woman with hazel eyes and wavy brown hair, woke up with the first light of dawn. She stretched in her bed, feeling the familiar sense of anxiety that preceded her walks in the forest. These walks had become her refuge, an escape from daily routine and a way to cope with her epilepsy. As she dressed in comfortable pants and a light shirt, Olivia remembered her doctor's words. Nature can be your best ally. And it certainly was. Since she had started spending time in the forest, her epileptic episodes had reduced considerably. With a backpack full of water, fruit, and her sketchbook, Olivia left her small house on the outskirts of town. The fresh morning air filled her lungs, and a smile spread across her face. Today felt different, as if something extraordinary was about to happen. Entering the forest, Olivia followed the path she knew so well. The sounds of nature enveloped her. Birdsong, the whisper of leaves moved by the breeze, the distant murmur of a stream. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the peace of the place wash over her. Suddenly, a different sound broke the harmony. It was a weak whimper, almost imperceptible. Olivia stopped, straining her ears. There it was again, a little louder this time. Without hesitation, she left the path and ventured into the thicket, guided by the sound. After a few minutes of searching, Olivia gasped in surprise. There, in a small clearing, lay a golden retriever puppy. The poor animal was covered in mud and had a visibly injured back leg. Its brown eyes looked at her with a mixture of fear and hope. "Hello, little one," whispered Olivia, approaching slowly so as not to scare it. "What happened to you?" The puppy whimpered softly, as if understanding that she was there to help. Olivia knelt beside it, taking out a water bottle and a handkerchief from her backpack. Carefully, she began to clean the mud from its golden fur. "Don't worry," she said in a soothing voice. "I'm going to get you out of here." As she examined it, Olivia noticed that the puppy had no collar or any identification. How had it gotten here? The forest was no place for such a young and clearly domesticated dog. Gently, she wrapped the puppy in her jacket and lifted it in her arms. It was heavier than it looked, but Olivia was determined to take it to safety. As she walked back to the path, the puppy snuggled against her chest, as if knowing it was safe. The journey back to town seemed endless. Olivia, aware that she needed professional help for the injured puppy, decided to take it directly to the local veterinary clinic. As she walked, she couldn't help but feel a special connection with the small animal in her arms. Upon arriving at the clinic, Olivia was greeted by a young veterinarian with green eyes and a kind smile. "I'm Dr. Ethan," he introduced himself, carefully taking the puppy. "What happened to this little friend?" Olivia explained how she had found it in the forest. Dr. Ethan nodded, carrying the puppy to the examination room. "You did well in bringing it here," he said. "It seems dehydrated, and that leg needs attention." While Dr. Ethan examined the puppy, Olivia stayed in the waiting room, her mind racing. She couldn't stop thinking about those brown eyes that had looked at her with such trust in the forest. After what seemed like an eternity, Dr. Ethan came out with a reassuring smile. "It's out of danger," he announced. "It has some cuts, and the leg was dislocated, but it will recover completely." Olivia felt immense relief. "Can I see it, Doctor?" Ethan led her to the room where the puppy was resting, now clean and with its leg bandaged. Upon seeing Olivia, the small animal wagged its tail weakly. "It seems to have taken a liking to you," observed Dr. Ethan with a smile. Olivia gently stroked the puppy's head. "What will happen to it now?" Dr. Ethan sighed. "Well, we'll try to find its owners, but if no one claims it, I'll adopt it," said Olivia, without thinking twice. The words came out of her mouth before she could fully process them, but as soon as she said them, she knew it was the right thing to do. Dr. Ethan looked at her surprised, but pleased. "It's a big responsibility," he warned, "I know," Olivia responded with determination, "but I feel like we were meant to find each other." As she signed the temporary adoption papers, Olivia thought of a name for her new companion. "I'll call you Max," she whispered to the puppy, which responded with a soft bark of approval. Dr. Ethan gave her instructions on how to care for Max during its recovery and asked her to come back in a week for a checkup. Before leaving, Olivia noticed that Dr. Ethan was looking at her in a special way, as if he too felt that this encounter was more than a coincidence. That night, with Max sleeping peacefully in an improvised bed next to hers, Olivia reflected on the day's events. She had gone out for a routine walk and returned with a new friend, and perhaps the beginning of something more. As sleep overtook her, she couldn't help but wonder what other secrets the forest held, and what adventures awaited her with Max by her side. What Olivia didn't know was that the encounter with Max was just the beginning of a series of events that would change her life forever. The forest she loved so much held deeper secrets than she could have ever imagined, and Max would be the key to unveiling them. As the moon rose over Pinewood Springs, casting mysterious shadows through the window, Max opened one eye and looked towards the forest in the distance. For a moment, it seemed that his eyes shone with an ancient knowledge, as if he were aware of the mission that awaited him alongside his new owner. Fate had united Olivia and Max, but the true reasons for their encounter were yet to be revealed. And in the depths of the forest, something stirred, waiting for the right moment to come to light. The days following Max's rescue were a whirlwind of emotions for Olivia. Her small apartment, once quiet and orderly, was now filled with dog toys, a padded bed, and the constant sound of little paws scampering across the wooden floor. Max was recovering quickly. His injured leg was healing well, and his playful personality was beginning to shine through. Olivia was surprised at how quickly the puppy had become an essential part of her life. Every morning, she woke up to Max licking her face, eager to start a new day of adventures. A week after the rescue, Olivia took Max for his checkup at the veterinary clinic. Her heart skipped a beat when she saw Dr. Ethan waiting for them with a warm smile. "Well, Max, look at you, you're a real champion," exclaimed Dr. Ethan, petting the puppy who wagged his tail enthusiastically. While Dr. Ethan examined Max, Olivia couldn't help but notice how gentle his hands were, how focused he looked as he worked. There was a moment when their eyes met, and Olivia felt a flutter in her stomach. "Max is evolving perfectly," Dr. Ethan finally announced. "You've done an excellent job, Olivia." "Thank you," she replied, blushing slightly. "The truth is, it's been easier than I thought. It's as if Max and I have known each other all our lives." Dr. Ethan nodded thoughtfully. "Sometimes animals have a way of connecting with us that goes beyond what we can understand." He paused, as if hesitating, then added, "Hey, I know this might sound a bit forward, but would you like to grab a coffee someday? We could talk more about Max and, well, about whatever you want." Olivia felt her heart racing. "I'd love to," she responded with a smile. They agreed to meet the following Saturday at a small cafe near the park. When Olivia left the clinic, with Max trotting happily beside her, she felt as if she were floating on a cloud. Saturday arrived faster than she expected. Olivia dressed carefully, opting for a floral dress that accentuated the color of her eyes. She left Max with her neighbor, Mrs. Thompson, who was delighted to look after the puppy. The cafe was cozy, with hanging plants and the aroma of freshly ground beans floating in the air. Dr. Ethan was already there when she arrived, looking handsome in a blue shirt that matched his eyes. The conversation flowed naturally. They talked about their jobs, their dreams, their experiences in Pinewood Springs. Dr. Ethan told her about his passion for local wildlife conservation, and Olivia shared her love for painting and how the forest inspired her. "You know, since you found Max, we've had several reports of lost animals in that area of the forest," commented Dr. Ethan, his face turning serious. "It's strange because it's normally a very quiet area." Olivia frowned. "Do you think there could be something dangerous there?" "I don't know," Dr. Ethan replied thoughtfully, "but there's definitely something unusual going on." As they walked through the park after coffee, Olivia felt Dr. Ethan's hand brush against hers. With her heart beating strongly, she intertwined her fingers with his. They looked at each other and smiled, no words necessary. Back at home, Olivia found Max waiting for her anxiously. She told him about her date, feeling as if the puppy could understand her. "Oh, Max," she sighed, I think I'm falling in love." That night, Olivia had a strange dream. She saw herself walking through the forest, following Max. The puppy was guiding her deeper and deeper until they reached a clearing she had never seen before. In the center was an ancient tree, its roots forming intricate patterns on the ground. Max began to dig frantically at the base of the tree. Olivia woke up with a start, her heart pounding. She looked at Max, who was sleeping peacefully in his bed. What did that dream mean? The following days, Olivia and Dr. Ethan began to see each other more frequently. They walked together in the park with Max, shared meals and long conversations. Olivia felt she had found someone special, someone who shared her love for nature and animals. However, as her relationship with Dr. Ethan blossomed, Max began to behave strangely. The puppy, normally cheerful and playful, seemed restless, especially when they approached the forest during their walks. Sometimes he would stop abruptly and stare intently into the thicket, as if he saw or heard something that humans couldn't perceive. One afternoon, while Olivia was painting in her small home studio, Max began to bark insistently at the door. When Olivia opened it, the puppy shot out into the street, running towards the forest. "Max, come back here!" shouted Olivia, running after him. The sun was beginning to set when she finally caught up with Max at the edge of the forest. The puppy was sitting, staring intently at the trees. As Olivia approached, she noticed something shiny on the ground. She bent down and picked up a small metal object. It was an old locket, covered in dirt and rusted by time. With trembling hands, she opened it. Inside was a faded photograph of a smiling young couple. Olivia looked at Max, who still had his eyes fixed on the forest. "What have you found, buddy?" she whispered. Suddenly, a chill ran down her spine. She had the unsettling feeling that someone or something was watching them from the shadows of the forest. Max growled softly, his fur bristling. "Let's go home, Max," said Olivia, her voice barely a whisper. As they walked away, she couldn't help but look back. For a moment she thought she saw a figure among the trees, but when she blinked there was nothing there. That night, as she examined the locket under the light of her lamp, Olivia couldn't shake off the feeling that she had stumbled upon something bigger than she could imagine. Max, sitting at her feet, looked at her with eyes that seemed to hold unimaginable secrets. Little did Olivia know that this discovery was just the beginning. The forest held dark secrets, and Max seemed to be the key to unveiling them. As the wind whispered through the trees outside her window, Olivia wondered what she had gotten herself into, and what other mysteries awaited her in the depths of the forest. The chapter ends with Olivia looking out the window towards the dark forest, the locket clutched in her hand while Max curls up at her feet, vigilant and protective. The feeling that something extraordinary is about to happen hangs in the air, leaving the reader eager to discover what secrets the forest holds and what role Olivia, Max, and Dr. Ethan will play in unveiling them. The days following the discovery of the locket were unsettling for Olivia. She couldn't get the image of the smiling young couple out of her head, nor the strange feeling she had experienced in the forest. Max, for his part, seemed more alert than ever, as if he were constantly on guard against some invisible threat. One afternoon, as Olivia was working in her studio, the doorbell rang. When she opened it, she found Dr. Ethan holding a bouquet of wildflowers. "Hi," he said with a shy smile. "I was passing by and thought I'd bring you these. I picked them on the way." Olivia felt her heart racing. "They're beautiful, thank you," she replied, inviting him in. As she prepared a vase for the flowers, Olivia noticed that Dr. Ethan was curiously observing the locket she had left on the table. "What's this?" he asked, picking it up carefully. Olivia hesitated for a moment before telling him about the strange find in the forest. Dr. Ethan listened attentively, his face growing serious. "Olivia, this could be important," he said finally. "I've been investigating the disappearances in the forest, and I think this locket might be related." "Disappearances?" Olivia felt a chill run down her spine. Dr. Ethan nodded. "There have been several cases over the years, people who enter the forest and never return. Most of the cases remained unsolved." Olivia looked at Max, who was watching them intently from his bed. "Do you think Max could have something to do with this?" she asked quietly. "I don't know," Dr. Ethan replied thoughtfully. "But there's definitely something special about that dog." They decided to investigate further. Dr. Ethan used his contacts at the veterinary clinic and local police to obtain information about old cases of people who had gone missing in the area. Meanwhile, Olivia began to have increasingly vivid dreams. In them, she saw herself following Max through the forest, always arriving at the same clearing with the ancient tree. But now in her dreams, she saw shadowy figures moving among the trees, whispering secrets she couldn't understand. One night, Olivia woke up with a start. Max was standing next to her bed, barking softly. Outside, a storm was lashing the town. Lightning illuminated the room, casting ghostly shadows on the walls. Suddenly, Olivia saw something that made her blood run cold. On the wall opposite her bed, illuminated by a lightning flash, appeared a shadow that didn't belong to anything in the room. It was the silhouette of a person, but it disappeared as quickly as it had appeared. With her heart pounding frantically, Olivia turned on all the lights in the house. Max followed her closely, growling softly. Although they found nothing out of place, Olivia couldn't go back to sleep that night. The next day, pale and with dark circles under her eyes, Olivia told Dr. Ethan about her experience. He listened with concern. "Olivia, I think we should take the locket to the police," he suggested. "It might be evidence of something bigger." Olivia nodded, although a part of her resisted the idea of parting with the object. She felt an inexplicable connection to it, as if it held the key to a mystery that only she could solve. That afternoon, as they were heading to the police station, something unexpected happened. Max, who was in the back seat of Dr. Ethan's car, began to bark frantically. Before they could react, the dog jumped out of the open window and ran towards the forest. "Max!" Olivia shouted, jumping out of the moving car. Dr. Ethan braked sharply and ran after her. They plunged into the forest, following Max's barks that were getting farther and farther away. After what seemed like an eternity, they reached a clearing. Olivia gasped. It was exactly like in her dreams. The ancient tree in the center, its roots forming intricate patterns on the ground. Max was there, digging frantically at the base of the tree. Olivia and Dr. Ethan approached, breathless. What they saw left them speechless. Max had unearthed a small metal box. With trembling hands, Olivia opened it. Inside were several old photographs, letters yellowed by time, and a diary. As they leafed through the contents, a name jumped out: Emily and Robert Johnson. These were the names written on the back of one of the photographs, the same couple that appeared in the locket. "Olivia," said Dr. Ethan with a shaky voice, "I think we've just found the clue we needed to solve the mystery of the disappearances." At that moment, a noise among the trees startled them. Max began to growl, his fur bristling. Olivia and Dr. Ethan turned slowly. There at the edge of the clearing was a figure. It was an older man with graying hair and eyes that seemed to hold secrets from decades past. He was staring at them, his face a mixture of surprise and relief. "I've been waiting for you," the man said in a tired voice. "It's time you learned the truth about this forest and about Max." Olivia and Dr. Ethan looked at each other, stunned. Who was this man? And what secrets was he about to reveal? As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, the forest seemed to hold its breath. The mystery that had remained hidden for years was about to be revealed, and the lives of Olivia, Dr. Ethan, and Max were about to change forever. The chapter ends with the old man slowly approaching, Max stopping his growling and wagging his tail, as if he recognized the newcomer, and Olivia feeling that she was on the brink of a discovery that could shake the foundations of everything she thought she knew about Pinewood Springs and its mysterious forest. The silence in the clearing was so dense, it was almost tangible. Olivia, Doctor. Ethan and Max observed the old man as he approached slowly, his footsteps crunching on the dry leaves. The evening light cast long shadows, giving the scene an almost mystical air. "My name is Frank," the man finally said, his voice laden with years and secrets. "And I've been waiting for this moment for a long time." Olivia stepped forward, clutching the box Max had unearthed. "Do you know us? Do you know something about these photos, about Emily and Robert Johnson?" Frank nodded slowly, his eyes fixed on Max. "I know much more than you can imagine. But first, you must understand that this forest is not what it seems. It holds secrets that have remained hidden for generations." Dr. Ethan, who had remained silent until then, intervened. "What does Max have to do with all this?" The old man smiled sadly. "Max is not an ordinary dog. He's a guardian, a protector of the forest's secrets. And you two," he said, looking at Olivia and Dr. Ethan, "have been chosen to uncover the truth." Olivia felt her head spinning. None of this made sense, and yet, deep in her being, she knew Frank was telling the truth. "Emily and Robert were my best friends," Frank continued. "They disappeared over 30 years ago, right in this clearing. But they weren't the only ones. Over the years, many others have disappeared in this forest." "What happened to them?" Olivia asked, her voice barely a whisper. Frank pointed to the ancient tree in the center of the clearing. "This tree is more than just a tree. It's a portal, a doorway to another world. Those who disappeared are not dead. They're trapped in that other world." Dr. Ethan let out a nervous laugh. "This is crazy. Portals, other worlds. It sounds like a fantasy tale." But Olivia wasn't so sure. She remembered her dreams, the shadows in her room, Max's strange behavior. Everything was starting to fit together. "And Max?" she asked. "How does he fit into all this?" Frank knelt to pet the dog, who greeted him with a soft whimper of recognition. "Max is a descendant of the guardian dogs that have protected this forest for centuries. They have the ability to sense when the portal is active and can guide those destined to solve the mystery." Olivia looked at Max with new eyes. Suddenly, their encounter in the forest no longer seemed like a coincidence. "Why us?" Dr. Ethan asked, his initial skepticism giving way to intense curiosity. "The forest chooses its protectors," Frank replied. "Olivia, your connection with nature, your epilepsy that calms in this place, and they're not coincidences. And you, Ethan, your dedication to animals and your search for the truth. You were both chosen." As they talked, the sun had completely set, plunging the clearing into twilight. Suddenly, Max began to bark, his gaze fixed on the ancient tree. Before the astonished eyes of all, the tree's roots began to glow with a faint, pulsing light. The air around the trunk seemed to ripple, like heat over asphalt on a summer day. "It's starting," Frank murmured. "The portal is opening." Olivia took a step towards the tree, feeling an inexplicable attraction. "Doctor..." Ethan grabbed her arm, his face a mixture of fear and fascination. "What should we do?" Olivia asked, her voice trembling slightly. Frank handed them a small object he took from his pocket. It was an old compass, its needle spinning erratically. "This compass will guide you. You must enter the portal and find the missing people, but be careful. The other side is not like our world. Time and space work differently there." Olivia and Dr. Ethan looked at each other, a silent conversation passing between them. Finally, they nodded. "We'll do it," Olivia said with determination. "Max will go with you," Frank added. "He knows the way." As they approached the glowing tree, Olivia felt a mixture of fear and excitement. They were about to embark on an adventure beyond their wildest dreams. "Wait," Frank said just before they touched the luminous trunk. "There's something else you need to know. The portal only remains open during the full moon. You have exactly 28 days to find the missing people and return, or you'll be trapped forever." With this warning echoing in their ears, Olivia, Dr. Ethan, and Max stepped forward. The world around them seemed to dissolve into a whirlwind of lights and colors. The last thing Olivia saw before everything vanished was Frank's worried face and the forest clearing fading into the distance. When the light dissipated, they found themselves in a place that defied all logic. The sky was an intense purple color, with 2 moons floating on the horizon. The vegetation surrounding them was similar to the forest they had just left, but everything seemed slightly distorted. Max barked softly, calling their attention. The dog began to walk with determination, as if he knew exactly where to go. "I guess we should follow him," said Dr. Ethan, intertwining his fingers with Olivia's. As they ventured into this new and strange world, Olivia couldn't help but think about everything they had left behind. Her normal life, her apartment, her daily routines. Everything seemed so distant now. 28 days, she murmured to herself. "We have 28 days to solve a decades-old mystery and save people lost in an alien world." Dr. Ethan squeezed her hand. "We'll do it," he said, with a confidence he didn't entirely feel. "Together." And so, guided by a dog with mysterious powers, armed only with an ancient compass and their determination, Olivia and Dr. Ethan embarked on the most extraordinary adventure of their lives. What they would find in this unknown world and whether they would manage to return in time was yet to be seen. The chapter ends with our heroes walking into the unknown, the strange alien landscape stretching out before them, full of dangers and wonders to discover. The 28-day countdown has begun, and every second counts in their mission to save the missing people and unravel the secrets of the magical forest. The purple sky stretched endlessly above Olivia and Dr. Ethan as they followed Max through a landscape that defied all logic. Trees with crystal leaves tinkled softly in the breeze, while phosphorescent flowers blinked like giant fireflies. The air was dense and smelled of a mixture of ozone and exotic spices. "It's like we've fallen into a surrealist painting," Olivia murmured, her eyes trying to absorb every strange detail. Dr. Ethan nodded, his hand never letting go of hers. "I wonder how much time has passed since we arrived here." As if answering his question, the compass in Olivia's hand began to vibrate. The needle spun wildly before stopping, pointing in a direction that seemed to change every time they blinked. "I guess that way," said Dr. Ethan, pointing in the direction indicated by the compass. Max barked in agreement and began to trot in that direction. As they advanced, the landscape changed constantly. Hills formed and disappeared in a matter of minutes, rivers flowed upwards, and occasionally they saw creatures that seemed to be an impossible mixture of terrestrial animals. After what seemed like hours, although the position of the two moons in the sky hadn't changed, they arrived at a clearing similar to the one they had left in their world. In the center, a tree identical to the portal rose majestically. "Do you think this is another portal?" Olivia asked, approaching cautiously. Before Dr. Ethan could respond, a voice startled them. "It's not a portal, it's a nexus." They turned quickly to see an older woman emerging from among the crystal trees. Her silver hair floated as if submerged in water, and her eyes shone with ancient knowledge. "My name is Aurora," said the woman. "I've been waiting for you." Olivia and Dr. Ethan exchanged looks of amazement. Max, for his part, approached Aurora, wagging his tail friendly. "You were waiting for us?" Dr. Ethan asked, his voice mixed with caution and curiosity. Aurora smiled. "This world has its own rules, its own prophecies. Your arrival has been predicted for a long time." "What is this place exactly?" Olivia asked. "And where are the missing people?" Aurora's face darkened. "This world is a reflection of yours, connected by the nexus trees. As for the missing people, they're scattered, trapped in pockets of time and space. Finding them won't be easy." "But we have to try," Olivia insisted. "We only have 28 days before the portal closes." Aurora nodded gravely. "Time flows differently here. What you might feel as days could be barely hours in your world, or vice versa. You must be cautious." Suddenly, the ground beneath their feet began to tremble. The purple sky darkened, and an icy wind blew through the clearing. "It's coming," Aurora whispered, her voice filled with fear. "What's coming?" Dr. Ethan asked, instinctively placing himself in front of Olivia. Before Aurora could answer, a massive shadow covered the clearing. Looking up, Olivia and Dr. Ethan saw with horror a creature that seemed straight out of a nightmare. It was like a dragon but made of shadows and lightning, its eyes glowing with a cold and ancient fire. "The Guardian," said Aurora. "It protects the secrets of this world, and it doesn't like intruders." Max began to bark fiercely at the creature, his fur bristling. "Run!" Aurora shouted. "Follow Max! He knows the safe way!" Without thinking twice, Olivia and Dr. Ethan started running, following Max as he plunged into the crystal forest. Behind them, they could hear the deafening roar of the Guardian and the sound of trees being torn apart. They ran non-stop, the landscape around them changing dizzily. They crossed rivers that flowed towards the sky, jumped over cracks that appeared and disappeared in the ground, and slid under branches that seemed to try to catch them. Finally, Max led them to a cave, hidden behind a waterfall of liquid light. They entered the darkness, panting and exhausted. The Guardian's roar faded in the distance. Are you all okay?" Dr. Ethan asked between labored breaths. Olivia nodded, unable to speak. Max curled up next to them, his presence comforting in the darkness of the cave. As they caught their breath, Olivia took out the compass. To her surprise, the needle now pointed firmly towards the back of the cave. "I think we should keep going," she said, showing the compass to Dr. Ethan. He nodded, standing up. "We don't have any other choice, but we have to be careful. We don't know what else awaits us in this world." They moved slowly through the cave, guided by the faint light of the compass and Max's glowing eyes. As they went deeper, they began to hear distant voices like whispers carried by the wind. "Do you hear that?" Olivia asked, her heart racing. Dr. Ethan nodded, his face a mixture of excitement and apprehension. "I think we've found the first missing people." As they turned a corner, they were left breathless. Before them stretched a huge cavern, illuminated by bright crystals embedded in the walls, and there in the center, they saw a group of people who seemed frozen in time, their faces a mixture of confusion and wonder. Among them, Olivia recognized the couple from the locket photo, Emily and Robert Johnson. "We found them," she whispered, tears of relief and emotion filling her eyes. But as they approached the missing people, a distant roar reminded them that their adventure was far from over. The Guardian was still looking for them, and they had to find a way to save these people and return to their world before it was too late. The chapter ends with Olivia and Dr. Ethan standing before the missing people, facing the challenge of rescuing them and escaping from the Guardian. The countdown continues, and every moment is crucial in their mission to unravel the mysteries of this strange world and return home. The cavern echoed with the sound of cautious footsteps as Olivia and Dr. Ethan approached the group of people frozen in time. Their faces, a mixture of surprise and fear, seemed to have been trapped at the exact moment of their arrival in this strange world. "Emily, Robert," Olivia whispered, extending a trembling hand towards the couple from the locket. Her fingers brushed Emily's cheek, and suddenly, as if a spell had been broken, the woman blinked and took a sharp breath. One by one, the missing people began to awaken from their slumber, looking around with eyes full of confusion and fear. Where are we?" Robert asked, his voice hoarse from disuse. Dr. Ethan stepped forward, trying to maintain calm. "You're safe now. We've come to rescue you." As Olivia and Dr. Ethan briefly explained the situation, Max kept watch at the entrance of the cavern, his ears alert for any sound of the Guardian. Emily, gradually regaining her composure, looked intently at Olivia. You look so much like someone I knew a long time ago." Olivia felt a chill run down her spine. "Who?" "My younger sister, Sarah," Emily replied with a sad smile. "She would be your age now." The revelation hit Olivia like lightning. Could it be that this woman, trapped in time, was her aunt, the lost sister of her mother? Before she could process this information, a distant roar shook the walls of the cavern. The Guardian was approaching. "We need to move," Dr. Ethan urged. "Can you walk?" The missing people nodded, standing up with difficulty. There were 11 in total of different ages and eras, judging by their clothing. Guided by Max and the compass, the group ventured deeper into the cavern, searching for an exit. The path was treacherous, with stalagmites that seemed to grow and move, and corridors that changed direction without warning. As they advanced, Olivia took the opportunity to talk with Emily. "My mother, her name is Sarah," she said quietly. Emily's eyes filled with tears. "Is she all right? Is she happy?" Olivia nodded, feeling a lump in her throat. "She's missed you all these years. She never lost hope of finding you." Their conversation was interrupted by a cry of astonishment from one of the missing people. They had reached an immense chamber, illuminated by an underground lake that glowed with its own light. In the center of the lake, a floating island held another nexus tree, its roots intertwining with the luminescent water. "It's beautiful," Dr. Ethan murmured, but his admiration quickly turned to concern. "But how are we going to cross?" As if answering his question, the water began to stir. From the depths emerged creatures that looked like a mixture between fish and deer, their bodies covered in shimmering scales and their heads crowned with luminous antlers. Max barked softly, approaching the edge of the water. One of the creatures came closer, bowing its head in a gesture that seemed like an invitation. "I think they want to help us cross," Olivia said, amazed. Cautiously, the group began to mount the aquatic creatures. The water was warm and seemed to hold them as if it were gelatin. As they advanced towards the island, Olivia couldn't help but notice that time seemed to flow differently here. The ripples in the water moved in slow motion, and the light pulsed with a rhythm that seemed to match the beating of her heart. Upon reaching the island, the nexus tree began to glow, its leaves whispering a strange and beautiful melody. "It's a portal," Robert said, approaching the tree. "I can feel it. It will take us back to our world." But before they could celebrate, a deafening roar shook the cavern. The Guardian had arrived. The creature of shadows and lightning materialized above the lake, its eyes fixed on the group. Max positioned himself in front of everyone, growling defiantly. "Quick!" Dr. Ethan shouted. "Everyone to the tree!" As the missing people ran towards the portal, Olivia noticed that the compass in her hand was vibrating violently. Without thinking, she threw it at the Guardian. To everyone's surprise, the compass exploded in a flash of blinding light upon contact with the creature. The Guardian roared in pain, retreating. "Now!" Olivia yelled. Dr. Ethan took her hand, and along with Max, they ran towards the tree. Just as the Guardian recovered and lunged at them, they touched the glowing trunk. The world around them dissolved into a whirlwind of light and color. Olivia felt as if she were falling and flying at the same time. Images of the Pinewood Springs forest, the cavern and world she didn't know flashed before her eyes in an eternal instant. And then, suddenly, everything stopped. Olivia opened her eyes, blinking in the sunlight. They were back in the clearing of the forest, surrounded by the familiar trees of Pinewood Springs. The missing people, Dr. Ethan, Max, and she, had managed to return. But as the joy of return flooded them, Olivia couldn't help but feel that something had changed. The forest seemed different, more alive, more aware, and in Max's eyes, she could see a glimmer of wisdom that went beyond the canine. Frank appeared among the trees, his face a mixture of relief and amazement. "You did it," he said, his voice breaking with emotion. "You've saved the lost ones and unveiled the secrets of the forest." As the group hugged, laughing and crying with joy, Olivia looked towards the portal tree. For a moment, she thought she saw the reflection of the Guardian in its bark, not as a nightmare creature, but as an ancient and wise protector. The chapter ends with the promise of family reunions, explanations to be given, and a new understanding of the world around them, but also with the certainty that the adventure is not over. The forest still holds more secrets, and the bond between Olivia, Dr. Ethan, Max, and the worlds beyond ours is just beginning to reveal itself. The days following their return were a whirlwind of emotions and explanations. News of the reappearance of the missing people spread quickly through Pinewood Springs, attracting the attention of local and national media. Olivia and Dr. Ethan found themselves at the center of a media storm, trying to protect the newcomers, while dealing with incessant questions about their incredible adventure. For Emily and the others, the shock of return was overwhelming. The world had changed drastically in their absence, and they faced the challenge of adapting to a reality that had moved on without them. One afternoon, as the sun was setting over the hills surrounding the town, Olivia sat on the porch of her house with Emily, watching Max play in the garden. "I still can't believe you're my aunt," Olivia said softly. "Mom is going to be so happy to see you." Emily smiled, her eyes filled with unshed tears. "I've missed so much. Your birth, watching you grow up, but I'm grateful to have this second chance." As they talked, Dr. Ethan approached, his face showing concern. "Ladies, I think we have a problem." He showed them his phone where a viral video was playing. In it, Max could be clearly seen glowing with a supernatural light while guiding a group of people out of the forest. "People are asking questions," Dr. Ethan said. "Questions we can't answer without revealing the truth about the forest and the other world." Olivia felt a chill. She knew that keeping the forest secret was crucial, but how would they explain the inexplicable? At that moment, Max raised his head, his ears alert. Seconds later, Frank emerged from the forest, his face somber. "The balance is disturbed," he announced without preamble. "By bringing back the missing people, we've altered the balance between the worlds." "What does that mean?" Olivia asked, feeling a knot in her stomach. Frank looked towards the forest. "The portal is becoming unstable. If we don't do something soon, both worlds could collapse." The gravity of the situation hit them like a cold wave. Their adventure wasn't over. In fact, It had barely begun. "What can we do?" Dr. Ethan asked, instinctively taking Olivia's hand. "We must return," Frank replied, "but this time we'll need help from both sides." As they discussed the details of their next move, Olivia noticed that Max was restless, insistently scratching at a specific spot in the garden. Curious, she approached and began to dig where the dog was indicating. To her surprise, she unearthed an ancient stone totem covered in symbols that seemed to change and move before her eyes. "It's a key," Frank explained, examining the totem. "A key to open doors between worlds that have remained closed for millennia." Suddenly, the sky darkened. An icy wind blew through the garden, and in the distance, they could hear the unmistakable roar of the Guardian. "It's getting closer," Emily whispered, her voice tinged with fear. Olivia looked at Dr. Ethan, then at Max, and finally at the forest stretching out before them. She knew they were about to embark on another dangerous adventure, one that could determine the fate of both worlds. "We have no choice," she finally said. "We must return and fix what we've altered." Dr. Ethan nodded, his face showing determination. "This time we'll be prepared." As the group prepared for their imminent departure, Olivia couldn't help but think about everything they had learned and experienced. The forest, Max, the worlds beyond, everything was connected in ways they were only beginning to understand. In the distance, the lights of Pinewood Springs twinkled like earthly stars. Olivia knew they were about to leave behind not only their home, but also the safety of everything they knew. The chapter ends with Olivia, Dr. Ethan, Max, Emily, and Frank standing at the edge of the forest, the ancient totem glowing softly in Olivia's hands. Before them, the trees seemed to whisper ancestral secrets, inviting them to venture once more into the unknown. The Guardian's roar echoed again, closer this time. It was time to depart. With one last glance at the town they were leaving behind, the group plunged into the darkness of the forest, ready to face the challenges that awaited them and restore the balance between the worlds. The adventure continued, and the fate of two realities now rested in their hands. The darkness of the forest engulfed Olivia, Dr. Ethan, Max, Emily, and Frank as they ventured deeper into its depths. The totem in Olivia's hands pulsed with a faint light, as if it were alive and aware of their mission. As they advanced, the forest around them began to change subtly. The familiar night sounds faded away, replaced by an unnatural silence. The leaves of the trees started to glow with a phosphorescent radiance, illuminating their path with an ethereal light. "The veil between the worlds is thinning," Frank murmured, his voice barely audible in the sepulchral silence. Suddenly Max stopped, his ears erect and his tail rigid. In front of them, the air seemed to ripple like heat waves over asphalt on a summer day. "It's here," Olivia said, feeling the totem vibrate in her hands. Without warning, the ground beneath their feet began to tremble. Luminous cracks opened in the earth, revealing fragments of the other world, glimpses of purple skies and impossible creatures. "The portal is opening by itself, Doctor," Ethan shouted, clinging to Olivia to maintain balance. The totem in Olivia's hands began to glow intensely, its symbols spinning and changing at a dizzying speed. Instinctively, she raised it above her head. A beam of light burst from the totem, connecting with the night sky. For a moment, the entire forest seemed to hold its breath. Then, with a burst of energy, the portal fully opened. The group was dragged into the vortex of light and color. Olivia felt Dr. Ethan's hand squeeze hers while Max barked, his voice lost in the chaos of the passage between worlds. When the light dissipated, they found themselves in a landscape that was both familiar and completely alien. The purple sky they remembered was now streaked with deep blue stripes, as if the two worlds were superimposed. "Something has changed," Emily said, her voice tinged with awe and fear. Before them stretched a vast desert of crystal, each grain of sand reflecting the light of the two moons hanging in the sky. On the horizon, they could see the distorted silhouettes of mountains that seemed to change shape with each blink. "The worlds are merging," Frank explained, his face grim. "If we don't restore the balance soon, both realities could collapse in on themselves." A familiar roar resonated in the distance. The Guardian had followed them. "We need to find the core," Olivia said, remembering the stories Aurora had told them on their previous visit. "The point where the two worlds connect." Max suddenly barked, running towards a nearby crystal dune. Upon reaching the top, the group collectively gasped. Before them stretched a vast labyrinth, its walls made of a substance that looked like liquid crystal. In the center, a pillar of light rose towards the sky, pulsing with energy. "That must be the core," Dr. Ethan said. "But how do we get there?" As if answering his question, the totem in Olivia's hands began to glow again. A ray of light shot out, tracing a path through the labyrinth. "It's showing us the way," Olivia whispered, amazed. However, their amazement quickly turned to horror when they saw a massive shadow descend over the labyrinth. The Guardian had arrived, and it seemed determined to prevent them from reaching the core. "We don't have much time," Frank urged. "We must move now." The group rushed towards the labyrinth, following the path traced by the totem. As they advanced, the walls around them changed and moved, reflecting fragments of both worlds. At one point, Olivia saw her own reflection in one of the walls, but it wasn't herself as she knew her. She saw alternative versions of herself, an Olivia who had never found Max, another who had been trapped in the other world, and even one where she was the guardian of the forest. "Watch out!" Dr. Ethan shouted, pulling her out of her trance just in time to dodge a shadow tentacle that emerged from a nearby wall. The Guardian was catching up to them, its shifting and menacing form looming over them. As they ran towards the center of the labyrinth, the ground beneath their feet began to crumble. Fragments of reality were detaching around them, revealing a terrifying void between the worlds. "We're close!" Olivia shouted, seeing the pillar of light getting closer. With one last effort, the group jumped towards the central platform just as the labyrinth behind them collapsed into the void. In front of the pulsating energy core, Olivia raised the totem. The symbols on its surface began to align with the patterns of light emanating from the pillar. "You have to choose, Olivia," Frank said, his voice grave. "You can restore the separation between the worlds, or you can merge them permanently," a familiar voice finished. Turning, they saw Aurora emerging from the shadows, her figure ethereal and majestic. "The choice is yours," Aurora said, "but remember, every decision has consequences." Olivia looked at Dr. Ethan, Emily, Max, and Frank. Then she looked at the Guardian, which now floated above them, its form more defined and less threatening. With the fate of two worlds in her hands, Olivia closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and prepared to make the most important decision of her life. Time seemed to have stopped as Olivia held the totem in front of the pulsing core. Everyone's eyes were fixed on her, waiting for her decision. The Guardian floated above them, its form oscillating between shadow and light, as if it too was in suspense before the imminent choice. Olivia closed her eyes, letting the sensations of both worlds flow through her. She could feel the magic and mystery of the alternate world, but also the warmth and familiarity of her home in Pinewood Springs. "I can't simply separate them," she finally said, opening her eyes, "nor can I merge them completely. Both worlds have beauty and value." With renewed determination, Olivia raised the totem. "I choose balance, a bridge between the worlds." As she spoke these words, the totem began to glow with blinding intensity. Rays of light in all imaginable colors emanated from it, intertwining with the energy of the core. The ground beneath their feet trembled, and the sky above them filled with kaleidoscopic patterns. Olivia felt as if she were being stretched in all directions, her consciousness expanding to encompass both realities. Suddenly, everything stopped. The light slowly dissipated, revealing a transformed landscape. They were back in the clearing of the Pinewood Springs forest, but it was a different forest. The trees seemed to glow with an inner light, their leaves gently changing color. In the sky, next to the familiar sun, a faint silhouette of the second moon from the other world could be seen. "You've done it," Aurora whispered, her form now more solid and present in this new, merged world. Dr. Ethan approached Olivia, taking her hand. "What exactly have you done?" he asked, his voice mixed with amazement and confusion. Olivia smiled, feeling a new understanding flowing through her. "I've created a bridge. The worlds are still distinct, but now they're connected. Magic and reality coexist in a delicate balance." The Guardian descended before them, its form now clear and majestic. It was no longer a nightmare creature, but a being of light and shadow, a protector of both worlds. "You have chosen wisely," the Guardian said, its voice resonating in their minds. The balance has been restored, but now it needs to be maintained. Frank stepped forward, his face showing a mixture of pride and concern. What does this mean for us? For Pinewood Springs. Olivia looked around, seeing how reality seemed to gently ripple, revealing glimpses of the other world at the edges of her vision. It means we have a responsibility. We are the guardians of this new balance. Max barked happily, his fur glowing with a supernatural light. Emily approached the dog, petting him affectionately. "It seems our little friend always knew more than he let on," she said with a smile. As the group began to explore this new merged world, they discovered wonders and challenges alike. Magical creatures now coexisted with local fauna, hidden from the sight of those who didn't know how to look. Places of power, like the forest clearing, had become connection points between realities. But with this new wonder also came new responsibilities. Olivia, Doctor. Phaethon, Emily, Frank and Max found themselves as the protectors of this new order, charged with maintaining the secret and the balance. The following weeks were a whirlwind of activity. They had to explain the reappearance of the missing people without revealing the full truth about the merged worlds. The official story spoke of a hidden refuge in the forest, an explanation that most accepted without asking too many questions. Meanwhile, in secret, the group worked to adapt Pinewood Springs to its new reality. They established patrol routes through the forest, monitoring areas where the barrier between worlds was thinner. Dr. Ethan used his connections at the veterinary clinic to care for magical creatures that occasionally crossed into our world. Olivia discovered that her abilities had changed. She could now perceive the currents of energy flowing between the worlds, and her epilepsy seemed to have disappeared completely, replaced by a heightened sensitivity to the magic surrounding her. One afternoon, as Olivia and Dr. Ethan were walking through the park with Max, they noticed a group of children playing near a fountain. To their amazement, they saw that the water in the fountain formed magical figures, visible only to those who knew how to look. "It's beautiful, Doctor," Ethan whispered, squeezing Olivia's hand. She nodded, feeling a mixture of pride and responsibility. "It is, and it's our duty to protect it." As the sun set over Pinewood Springs, painting the sky in shades of gold and purple, Olivia reflected on the incredible journey that had brought them to this point. What had begun as the rescue of a puppy had become an adventure that had changed the very fabric of reality. The chapter ends with Olivia, Doctor, Ethan and Max observing the town from a hilltop, watching as the evening light momentarily revealed the magic that now permeated their world. They knew that the challenges they would face would be many, but also that together, as guardians of this new balance, they were prepared for whatever might come. The adventure wasn't over. In fact, it was just beginning. And with the Guardian as their ally and the Totem as their guide, Olivia knew they were ready to write the next chapter in the story of two worlds united by magic, love, and destiny.